significant maintenance, stripping and upgrading the structures of the older 737s, and the airline was in the process of doing so, but not urgently. As the airline noted, Boeing had assured them that the airplanes were still safe to fly. In the cabin, what Schornsteimer had described as canvas ripping sounded more like an explosion. One passenger, Eric Backlund, was quoted in the newspaper The Maui News as thinking, "This is it, I'm done." And then, "I don't have enough life insurance." Fortunately, because the flight was short, the passenger seatbelt sign was still illuminated. 58-year-old flight attendant Clarabelle C.B. Lansing, a veteran flight attendant with 37 years' experience, had just informed passengers of last call as the flight was about to begin its descent. She was handing a drink to passenger Joy Flanagan in seat 2C, who was flying with her husband on a vacation to celebrate their 21st wedding anniversary. Lansing and Flanagan's hands had just touched when they heard the explosion. Flanagan's husband, William, told the Washington Post that his wife fell forward bleeding onto her tray table, her head and face cut by flying metal and flailing wires. He was terrified that she would be sucked out of the plane. He grabbed her arms and told her that he loved her.
I love your bangs.
The original co-pilot that morning had done the required pre-flight visual check and had not noted any abnormalities. But the check was done in pre-dawn darkness on a lighted apron. A passenger, Gail Yamamoto, later reported that she had noticed a crack in the fuselage as she was boarding at Hilo, but had not mentioned it
What
to the
is
flight.
that? Is that
In the
something right
cockpit,
by
the
my
rapid
face?
depressurization was so powerful that Tompkins' head was jerked backwards, and she saw debris
Oh.
including gray pieces of insulation floating in the cockpit. Captain Schornsteimer said that it happened almost instantaneously. There was no warning. He looked back and could see that the cockpit entry door was missing. Beyond, he could see blue sky where the first-class ceiling should have been. The hole was much larger than should have been possible. The Boeing 737 had been designed with hair straps that ran both along the length and circumference of the fuselage. These were designed to redirect any running cracks perpendicular to the original crack. This would then cause a flap to open that would release internal pressure in a controlled manner without compromising the plane's structural integrity. That is, at least, how it was supposed to happen.
Thank you, Beverly.
Captain Schornsteimer took the controls and, because of the depressurization, began a controlled descent. He didn't know it, but the passenger oxygen manifold had been severed, so the passenger oxygen system was not working. First Officer Tompkins turned the transponder to emergency code 7700. She tried to radio Honolulu that the flight was diverting to Maui, but there was so much noise in the cockpit that she couldn't be sure they could hear her. She and Schornsteimer couldn't even hear each other and had to communicate using hand signals. They had no communication
I
with the
can't hear
captain,
you.
nor
I am
did
deaf
they
and blind.
among the passengers.
Hello.
18 feet of fuselage had been torn from the plane, from just behind the main cabin
That's
entry door to just
too
forward
big
of
for
the wing.
Beverly's ass.
The skin had been torn off from floor level on the left side to the window level on the right. The plane had, in fact, nearly broken in two, being held together only by the floor beams, several of which were broken or damaged. Flight attendant Jane Sato Tomita had been standing towards the front of the plane. She had been struck on the head by debris and was unconscious.
Debris.
The third flight attendant,
Debris.
Michelle Honda, had been thrown to the ground and bruised, but was conscious. Despite her injury, she had pulled herself up and was moving down the aisle,
VTech.
comforting the injured, ensuring that passengers were strapped in, and helping everyone don life vests. She tried to contact the crew on the intercom, but could not get through. Then she asked something that no passenger ever wants to hear. Is there anyone here who can fly this plane?
I can. I am blind, though.
Schornsteimer described the flight controls as loose.
I know,
In
I
fact, the
know,
debris had done damage to the leading edges of both
unorthodox.
wings, both horizontal
I
stabilizers
can
and
be
the vertical stabilizers.
the ears, and he can be my
The blade had
eyes.
gone into both engines, damaging several fan blades.
My eyes and ears.
Air traffic control had not received Tompkins' transmission, but had seen the emergency transponder code. Unable to make contact with the plane, they notified Kahului that the plane may be headed their direction. As the plane descended, Tompkins switched to the Maui Tower frequency and was able to make contact.
Hello,
Rapid
this is Cali
depressurization
Tower.
And declaring an emergency.
Come in.
As the plane started descending,
Mayday,
Kahului,
mayday.
more problems started to arise.
I
Due
am
to the damage
blind
to
and
the
I
control
cannot
surfaces,
land this
the plane became
plane.
harder to control under 170 knots, requiring Schornsteimer to come in fast. 170 knots, just over 195 miles per hour, which is 50 miles faster than normal. As
Oh,
they
that's
lowered
not
the
that
landing gear,
bad.
the light for the forward gear failed to illuminate. Tompkins switched to manual nose gear
It's okay,
extension,
I
but
can't
neither
see
the red
anyways.
lockdown light nor the red landing gear unsafe light illuminated. There is a way to manually look down on the gear, but the downlock viewer was under a hatch under the jump seat, which was occupied, and Captain Schornsteimer thought it was more important to get the plane down.
Hey, man.
Tompkins told Maui
come
that they
over
were
here
landing
and
without
take
the
my
nose gear,
notions?
and that they would need all the emergency equipment.
Shut up. I'm need
As they approached,
patience.
Schornsteimer felt a yaw.
push.
The left
I need
engine
quiet.
had failed. He attempted to restart but got no response. In fact, the thrust lever cable going through where the floor had been deformed had broken. Witnesses on the
Oh,
ground reported
shit.
smoke pouring from the engine. 30
smell
seconds before
that?
landing, the tower could finally visually see the front wheel, advising, the gear
Smells
appears
like
down,
oil burning.
gear appears down. Less than 13 minutes after Schornsteimer first heard the ripping sound, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 set down. One
Autopilot
passenger told the New York
engage.
Times, I've had worse landings in a normal aircraft. Another said, he brought that plane down so smoothly, It was just like riding in a Cadillac. It was
You're
no small feat
welcome.
bringing down the plane so smoothly, despite the yaw from losing an engine. Had
What
the
about the
landing been rough,
yaw?
the plane easily could have broken apart. An
Oh,
Aloha
yes.
Airlines employee at Kahului Airport said, "I can't believe it even stayed together. It should not have been able to land." The plane was so damaged that workers had to prop up the middle of the plane in order to just tow it off the runway. The Aloha employee described the plane as being held together by nothing but floor beams and the man upstairs. An emergency
right.
evacuation was conducted on the runway. 8 people were seriously injured, including Flight Attendant Jane Sato Tomito and Joy Flanagan. Injuries included cuts and burns
Sorry,
on the flying
Joy.
wires, and one person with a fractured skull.
I believe that was
57
my
others had more
fault.
minor injuries. The ambulance service in Maui was overwhelmed. A tour company volunteered their vehicles to take people to the hospital.
Thank you.
It was only as they did a head count that they realized that CB Lansing was no longer with the plane. She had been swept out of the plane with the initial depressurization.
I thought we were
Airline
forgetting
employees described
somebody.
her as the textbook model of a good stewardess.
Do you think she's still alright?
Accident aboard Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was one of the most significant in history in terms of the way that it transformed aviation.
You
The
think we
damage
should go
changed the
back
way
and
the
try to
entire
get her?
industry understood and studied metal fatigue and caused the FAA to focus much more clearly on the risks associated with older aircraft. Assumptions
Carol's
that
still
argued that
alive?
Because the short flights that Aloha Airlines flew meant that the planes never achieved full pressurization and should have put less stress on the airplanes turned out to be completely erroneous. In fact, it's apparently cycles, the number of takeoffs and landings, that is most important in understanding stress on the fuselage. And in addition, the tropical
Carol
climate
was
in
our
which Aloha
DJ.
Airlines operated was a contributing factor, as that causes corrosion. The airplane apparently suffered from something called widespread fatigue damage, or WFD.
Yes,
and that
generally, I'm
kept the
tired all
carriers
around.
operating as they should.
Nearly enough.
The investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board identified numerous flaws in the Aloha Airlines maintenance and inspection system, but they actually
Wow.
went beyond Aloha Airlines.
If you
As
look
a
at the
result, the
landfill
FAA
for
established
garbage, you're
the
gonna find it.
National Aircraft Research Program. As a result of the program, the FAA has issued more
Sometimes
than
find
100
bullshit.
airworthiness directives regarding WFD.
What? Oh wait.
Boeing
No,
was also
that's
found
not
to be at
right.
fault, particularly with a process called cold bonding, which was used in the construction of some early 737s and which was found to be structurally deficient and to cause panel delamination. Schornsheimer sued Boeing on a product liability claim, and both he and Tompkins received damage awards from the claim.
What about
Robert Schornsheimer
Airbus?
continued to fly as a captain with
sounds
Aloha
about right.
Airlines. He
Yeah,
credited
everyone
his
did
time in
go
the Air
board,
Force
did.
training other pilots as part of the reason that he was able to successfully
What about
manage the
JetBlue?
emergency and land Flight 243. He retired in 2000.
What happened to Concorde?
Mimi
Number
Tompkins went on
one.
to become a captain with Aloha Airlines and continued to fly with that airline until that airline closed in 2008. Because of her experience with Flight 243, she was instrumental in creating a pilot assistance program through the Airline Pilots
Okay.
Association to assist
Oh.
pilots who had faced emotional trauma. In
Oh.
2011, that
Mimi
association
was
gave
the
her their Pilots Assistance Award. According to the organization, pilots around the
Aren't
globe
Amelia
have
Earhart?
benefited from her expertise.
Is that what
A Coast Guard search for
Shut
the missing
up.
pieces of Flight 243, as well as the remains of Flight Attendant CB Lansing, was unsuccessful. Last April, the 30th
Sorry,
anniversary
CB.
of the accident, the Association of Flight Attendants
I love
recognized
you.
her sacrifice, as well as the heroics of the other members of the crew. They reminded us, we are aviation's first responders. We are on every flight,
Right.
ensuring safe passage
Who made
on
that
their
decision?
journey. When tragedy strikes, we are there
I
to
trust
save
him,
them.
but I don't know if the
Flying
audience
Ace
trusts
Eddie
him, bro.
Rickenbacker is one of the most well-known of America's World War I fighting
think they
heroes,
will
right up there with
step
Sergeant
into the
York.
bathroom alone
His
with you.
irrepressible smile and his
Not they have a
26
reason to.
confirmed aerial victories made him a national hero in the Great War. But his heroics during the Second World War are not nearly
guys
as
know
well
he was
known.
blind,
It
right?
is a story of survival, of perseverance, of the true nature of heroism. It is a story that deserves to be remembered. Born in Ohio in 1890, Eddie Rickenbacker's rambunctious childhood included several notable accidents and near misses that might well explain his fearless nature that would serve him later in life. Certainly he learned to endure hardship.
of head trauma,
Rickenbacker's
that's
father
for
passed
sure.
away when Eddie was just 13, making him leave school to seek work to support his family.
And a
Fascinated with
blockbuster.
machines and automobiles in particular, he eventually was a car salesman for the Columbus Buggy Company. By the 1910s, he became a
Devin
nationally
Fellow,
famous
one of
race
them.
car driver, racing Maxwells and Peugeots, and driving 4 times in the Indianapolis 500, back in the day when the raceway was
Crash
paved
every
with bricks
time.
and the race was set for 500 miles, because the raceway had no lights
Well, they
and
made
the
it
race had
12.
to finish before dark. He joined the Army in
okay,
1917,
I'm blind.
almost immediately after the U.S. decided to join the Allies in the Great War. He wanted to fly, as that appealed to his mechanical nature, and he was
that
convinced
a
that race
Campbell?
car drivers would make excellent pilots, as they were used to confined spaces and going fast.
Yeah, it's very
His lack of a
small.
college degree made it difficult, and then his mechanical
Very
skill,
stupid.
which made him more valuable on the ground than in the air. But eventually, he earned a place in an air combat unit, the famed 94th Aero Squadron. and proceeded
That's
to score
right.
26 verified aerial victories, the most
I
of
would
any
have
American
jumped
in the war.
off of the wing
He
onto
returned
another
a bona fide war
airplane
hero,
and
earning more
hijacked him.
decorations for valor than any other American in the war, including the Medal of Honor.
Give me your
In
airplane.
1922, he married a divorcee named Adelaide Front Durant, a beautiful, strong-willed woman 5 years his senior. Her personality was described as volcanic, a trait that would
That's
serve
what I'm talking
Rickenbacker
about.
in the future. After the war, he
Yeah.
continued a larger-than-life
I like the
existence.
sound of
He
that.
started a motor car
Even when I
company
was
that
in
sold the
school,
first production cars equipped with a four-wheel braking system. He purchased and operated the Indianapolis Motor Speedway,
Wait, did
where
you
he
just
made
say
many improvements to
he
the
had
facility. And then,
ABS?
the aviation pioneer that he was, as a vice president of General Motors, he founded Eastern Airlines, which he turned into a major carrier. He bought the
Oh.
company from GM and was the airline's president for more than 30 years. But there is a chapter of his extraordinary life that is often forgotten, and it tells possibly more about his nature than all his other adventures. In 1942, Secretary of War Henry Stimson asked Rickenbacker, then 52 years old, to travel
What
to
a
the Pacific
simp.
Theater as an observer to report on the status of U.S. Army Air Force units stationed there. Always eager to serve his country, Rickenbacker obliged. On October
Yes, sir.
21st, 1942, he and his aide, Colonel Hans Adamson, took off from Hawaii with an Army aircrew in a Boeing B-17, headed to Canton Island, 1,800 miles to the southwest, on the first leg of their tour. Introduced in 1938, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress was one of the most iconic aircraft of the Second World War, and
Isn't
was
that
the third
what
most
Dick
produced
Bong
bomber aircraft
flew?
of all time. Powered by four Wright
Or a
supercharged
P-38.
turbo engines, it had a loaded weight of over 54,000 pounds and a range of 2,000 miles with a full load of bombs. The B-17 used that day had been configured for transport, and in addition to Rickenbacker and Adamson, included 5 crewmen, a pilot, a co-pilot, a navigator, a radio operator, and an engineer. There was an additional serviceman on board, an Army staff sergeant returning to his unit after recovering
Dick
from
Bong?
illness. An hour before the scheduled arrival at Canton Island, pilot
That's my
William
great,
Cherry
great
throttled the plane
granddad.
back and slowly descended, looking for Canton Island. They never saw it. This represents one of the very real dangers of early air travel. Navigation
killed
is
the-
difficult,
He
especially
killed a
over open water.
crocodile with an airplane.
In the era before computers
there
and global
and
positioning
search all
satellites,
the
aircraft
time.
had to plot courses using celestial navigation, just like early mariners. The navigator, Lieutenant John DeAngelis, used a device called a bubble octant
John
that plots the
DeAngelis?
aircraft's course based on its relationship to a celestial body. The speculation
Right.
is that a rough takeoff in Hawaii had jarred the instrument. Even being a few degrees off could have made them miss their destination by many miles.
Oh, we were
In
way
fact,
more than a few
navigational
degrees.
error was a common occurrence and a very real threat to any aircrew at the time.
Usually
The crew tried many means to locate their position. They were in radio contact with Canton Island and asked them to fire off anti-aircraft guns that would show their position. Canton dispatched search planes. Another island was able to determine a compass heading based on their radio signal, but was unable to determine a bearing.
I don't know
Desperately,
where
the
we
aircrew
are.
looked for a ship that might allow them to determine their location, but none were on the horizon.
Look for a
As the
lighthouse
airplane ran low
somewhere.
on fuel, the 8 men aboard were facing a harrowing prospect. They were going to have to ditch the airplane in the open Pacific with no idea of their location for rescue.
That's okay.
They did the best they could. They threw out anything not needed for survival to lighten the plane. They stocked emergency rations and water near the hatch where they would be easiest to get to. They donned Mae West
same time
life jackets
tomorrow,
and prepared
okay?
the aircraft's 3 life
Okay,
rafts,
okay.
2 of which would be dropped
Be
by
ready
lever
this
in the
time.
cockpit as the aircraft neared the water.
Okay,
As
Dick
the
Bong.
airplane descended, it was clear that the ocean swells were high.
Not everyone gets
Crashing
paid
into
for
a
this
swell
shit.
would be like
Remember
crashing
that.
into a brick wall, and the more damage there was to the aircraft, the faster it would sink.
Oh, that
Cherry
wasn't
put
so
the heavy plane
bad.
down about as well
Some
as he
people
could.
We made it.
Belly flopping in the middle
It
of
was
the
not so
crossing
choppy.
swells, but was still very rough. All 7 received various injuries, perhaps the worst being Rickenbacker's aide, Colonel Adamson, who badly sprained his back.
Right?
In the
Ow.
chaos of the crash, it was much harder to retrieve the survival supplies than they hoped, as water rushed through the broken windows.
Dang
the plane
it.
weighed more than 25 tons and was sinking quickly. The ocean swells were over 6 feet, making the rafts difficult to enter. 2 of the rafts were supposed to hold 5 men each, and the smallest would hold 2. But that rating was extremely generous.
Hush.
Rickenbacker later argued that the person who said it fit 5 should be forced to test his theory at sea. The larger raft had a usable area of just 5 by 9 feet. 3 men could hardly tuck into them. When they tried to find the water and supplies that had been carefully
No,
stacked, they were
fuck that.
gone,
You
washed
get
out
your
by sea.
fat ass in there
In
and
the
see
end,
how big it
the
is.
only food they had managed to salvage was 4 oranges that Cherry had stuffed in his pockets.
Staved off the scurvy.
Not my problem.
They had few supplies. The
Should've
rafts
got
came with
Wendy's
hand
before you
pumps
came
and
here.
repair kits. They had
Still
a
got
first aid
scurvies.
kit. They had a flare gun. Both of the pilots had kept their pistols. They had a couple of fishing lines with fish hooks, but nothing for bait. Perhaps most
What?
importantly, Rickenbacker had managed to save 60 feet of line from the airplane. That allowed them to
That's
tether
what
the
you
rafts
got?
together. On the open ocean,
Had the
companionship
everything?
and teamwork was critical. Without the tether,
No
the 3
food?
rafts certainly would have drifted apart.
But mine-
The tight open rafts were terrible. The heat blistered during the day, but as they were constantly soaked by seawater, it would be freezing at night. They had no bait for the fishing lines. They tried using orange peels, but with no luck. They hoped to shoot a seagull with one of the pistols, but none came close. The pistols rusted in the salt air, and they threw them away. For the first 60 days, the 8 men shared just 4 oranges for food.
Oh, that's
A
okay.
miracle
They
came on
made
the 8th
this.
day. As Rickenbacker rested with his hat on his head, a
Orange a
seagull
day
literally
keeps
landed on
the
his
dick
face.
bong away.
He managed to grab its leg and throttle the bird. Not only did the meat provide sustenance, but it was also wet and quenched thirst.
Did
They
he just
used
say
birds
he
and
rode a
pestins as bait
bird?
for the fishing lines and immediately started catching fish.
They were
A rainsquall
hallucinating.
came and they were
weren't
able to capture fresh water in the collapsible buckets that were included with the rafts.
No, I ain't sticking around.
But Alexander Kazmarchek, the army sergeant who was returning to his unit, was declining. He had been recovering from an illness before the trip and was still weak. The conditions had only exacerbated his condition. He died on their 13th day at sea.
Oh no.
The shortage of food and water continued to
I'm
plague them.
sorry.
Occasionally they got fish or got some water from a rain squall, but their health was declining. At some point, they put the 3 strongest ones into one of the larger rafts to see if they could row against the current, but it was just
Dick
too
Bong,
strong.
come here.
They occasionally saw planes in the distance, but they were unable to flag them down. On the 20th day, they finally split up, sending the 3 rafts different directions in the hope of finding land. Rickenbacker wanted them to stay together, but the crew had become convinced that this was their best hope of survival. Rickenbacker was left on the
Right?
raft with the 2
I need
sick
to be
men,
able to
including his
eat you
longtime
if
friend
I need to.
Adamson, who was near death. With no food and little water, the situation was dire. The
I
next
am
day,
very
Rickenbacker
dead,
himself went
nearly.
weak, tried to give both men water, and they were too weak to even lift their heads.
Oh, we got the
The end for all 3 seemed near.
No,
When
look, I'm head
2 Navy
nodding.
float planes flew over the raft. The planes
Thank
turned
you.
and flew close enough that it was clear that they had seen the raft. One returned and landed. They were rescued. It turns out a patrol had spotted another of the rafts, the small one with the pilot, William Cherry. He
Oh,
had been able
thank
to point them in
goodness.
the direction of Rickenbacker's raft. Then they got news on the radio that 3 downed airmen had been found on a desert island.
Come in.
It was the crew of the other life raft.
Yeah, you left us
Astoundingly,
here.
despite their condition, Rickenbacker himself had lost 40 pounds. They were
That's not so
all
bad.
alive.
Excellent.
Through it all, the World War I ace was their leader. He is the one that kept their spirits up. He demanded that they bring the rafts together every night for a group prayer session. And when encouragement didn't work, he would browbeat and berate them for giving up.
Why was
He was
I never
apparently so
invited?
forceful that the rest of them made a pact that they were going to survive, if only to outlive him. His
Oh,
strength
wow.
kept them alive. A type of heroism that's much different than, and in many ways much more powerful than, shooting down airplanes in the First World War. The redoubtable Rickenbacker continued on to complete his inspection of the Pacific Army Air Forces and provide his report. As for his taste in women, after 2 weeks, the Army had decided to give up on them and declare them dead. It was Adelaide Rickenbacker and her volcanic personality that pressed them to continue searching, a move that likely saved their lives.
Yay.
The 2 traveled together extensively after Eddie retired from Eastern Airlines in 1963. Eddie Rickenbacker passed away following a heart attack in 1973 at the age of 82. He and Adelaide have been married 51 years.
That's
Summer
an
of
easy roll.
1945 represented hope for a war-weary nation. Germany had surrendered in May. In the Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur announced that the Philippines had been liberated. And in New Mexico, the United States tested the bomb that would finally put an end to the war.
Oh, good
There was plenty
heavens.
of reason in July 1945 for New Yorkers to look forward
We all
to
know
enduring
what that
peace.
really means.
But their peace was shattered with a spectacular accident involving a United States Army Air Force plane and the tallest building in the world.
Right,
history.
but not the other ones.
Deserves to be remembered.
The other 3
July
buildings.
18, 1945.
That
the United
came
States Army
down.
Air Force's B-25 Mitchell was flying from Bedford Army Airfield in Massachusetts to New Jersey's Newark Airport. At the controls of the plane was Lieutenant Colonel William F. Smith, Jr. The 27-year-old Smith was an experienced pilot, a veteran of more than 30 missions and 1,000 combat hours flying B-17 bombers over Europe during the war. The B-25 was a twin-engine bomber, smaller than the B-17s that Smith had flown over Europe. This
When
plane,
I
using
was
call
younger, I
sign
used to lay in my
0577
twin-sized
and
bed and
nicknamed
wonder
Old
where
John
my
Feathermerton,
brother
had
was.
been converted to fly VIPs. Smith had piloted the plane from Sioux Falls Army Air Base in South Dakota and was scheduled to pick up his commanding officer in Newark before continuing back to Sioux Falls. He was accompanied by 30-year-old Army Air Force Staff Sergeant Christopher Dimitrovich and 19-year-old Navy
Dimitrovich.
machinist mate Albert Perna, who was hitching
Hello,
a ride
Albert.
from Massachusetts to see his family in Brooklyn. As the plane approached New York City, it ran into heavy fog. Smith requested permission to
don't
land
say.
at New York's municipal airport, LaGuardia Field, but was advised that the visibility was too low
Didn't I take
to
you
go on
there?
to Newark. LaGuardia Air Traffic Control signed off with a warning about visibility in the fog. At the present time, the controller said, I cannot see the top of the Empire State Building.
Oh,
Words
man.
turned out to be hauntingly cryptic. Smith responded, Thank you very much. It's not exactly clear what happened next, but it seems likely that Smith mistook the East River for the Hudson. That was a fatal mistake. Had he turned left as he
yeah,
came by
I
the
imagine.
Chrysler Building, he would have been safe. But disoriented, he turned right, taking his plane straight over the island of Manhattan. Air traffic control had advised that he stay above 1,500 feet over the city, but apparently disoriented
no,
when he
you-
himself cleared the city. He had
Go
dropped to
answer
500 feet,
questions.
perhaps thinking that he was on approach to Newark, or perhaps trying to get a view of the ground to
Who
orient
wants
himself.
to go to Newark?
Suddenly, the fog cleared just enough for Smith to realize that he was flying in the middle of skyscrapers.
What the fuck?
Stan Lomax, a radio sports announcer, was driving to work when he heard the plane's engines. As he looked up, he recalled he yelled, "Climb, you fool, climb!" from his car window. At 200 miles per hour, the plane was on a collision
said, "Thank
course
you
with an
very much."
850-foot RCA building at 30 Rockefeller Center.
Climb, you fool,
Smith
climb.
veered
Thank
at the
you.
last moment, averting disaster, but the turn took him on a collision course with the tallest building on Earth. New York's iconic 102-story Empire State Building. Mort
Right,
Cooper,
right.
a big league pitcher who had helped the St. Louis
Right.
Cardinals win 2 World Series,
Right.
witnessed the crash from the 16th floor of the Hotel Commodore. He said, "I heard the roar of a plane and picked it up as it roared between me and the RCA building. Suddenly it flashed across my mind that it was flying very low and that it would hit the Empire State Building."
Oh man, that's not going to be good.
The streets of downtown Manhattan were relatively empty on a foggy Saturday, but there were some witnesses along Fifth Avenue and 34th Street who heard the roar of the
I
engines.
hope
They
that
described the
thousands
plane
of people
climbing
have
steeply.
video camera
William
pointers
Utley,
right at
vice
it.
president of a public relations firm in the Mercantile Building at 10 East 40th Street, was
Just
quoted
like
in the Scranton,
JFK.
Pennsylvania Times Tribune. The plane
Yes.
was past my window at eye level, or just above
And
it.
JFK
This
Jr.
office is on the 38th floor. The
And
engine was apparently
Mr.
lowered,
Kennedy,
and the pilot
Robert.
was trying to gain altitude. Smith was apparently trying to climb out of the city, but it was too late. At 9:40 a.m., old John Feather Merchant, traveling some 200 miles an hour, struck the 34th Street facade of the Empire State Building at an altitude of 913 feet
Okay.
between the 78th and 79th floors. Nanette
don't
Morrison,
know what floor
at the
you're
same
really
firm as
on.
Mr. Utley said, "There was a terrific explosion when the plane hit. It looked as
The
though the
airway
flash of
darkness.
flames and the explosion spread over 4 floors." Albert
Break
Fuller
orange-
at the
break the
Beale
orange
Department
box.
store
Hey,
across
would
the
you
street
settle your
told
shit
the
down?
Sun Times that the floor
Relax.
I looked at the clerk and I said, "Isn't that strange?"
No, that's normal.
Who the fuck is
Happens
this
every
kid?
day. Oh man, I was recording. Shit.
I'm still recording.
Now I have to prove to
Ah, my eyes. I am blind. What happened to History Guy?
You know who came up with the quote?
No. Look at. You ask, oh. Turn out the lights. I can't see anything. It's so bright out there.
Her bag of trash shortly.
What?
To
Drink to passenger Joy Flanagan in seat 2C,
Oh,
who was
good to
flying with
see
her
you
husband
again, Joy.
on a vacation to celebrate their 21st wedding anniversary. Lansing and Flanagan's
Sorry,
hands
but you're
had
gonna
just
get
touched
injured on this
when they heard
flight.
the explosion. Flanagan's husband, William, told the Washington Post that his wife fell forward bleeding onto her tray table, her head and face cut by flying metal and flailing wires. He was terrified that she would be sucked out of the plane. He grabbed her arms and told her that he loved her.
I love your bangs.
The original co-pilot that morning had done the required pre-flight visual check and had not noted any abnormalities. But the check was done in pre-dawn darkness on a lighted apron. A passenger, Gail Yamamoto, later reported that she had noticed a crack in the fuselage as she was boarding at Hilo, but had not mentioned it to the flight attendants. In the cockpit, the rapid depressurization was so powerful that Tompkins' head was jerked backwards, and she saw debris, including gray pieces of insulation, floating in the cockpit.
Oh my
Captain
goodness.
Schornsteimer said that it happened almost instantaneously. There was no warning.
I'm pretty
Look
sure
back.
that's not supposed to
You could see
happen.
that the cockpit entry door was missing.
Yeah, that's not
Beyond,
supposed to
you could see
happen.
blue sky, where the first-class ceiling should have been.
That's
The
actually
first
The hole was
class.
much larger
cinema.
than should have been possible. The Boeing 737 had been designed with tear straps that ran off along the
Beverly.
length and circumference of the fuselage.
Get up
These were
here.
designed to redirect any running cracks perpendicular to the original crack. This would then cause a flap to open that would release internal
Let me
pressure
see
in a
your
controlled
crack.
manner without compromising the plane's structural integrity.
actually be good.
That is,
Yeah,
at least,
something.
how it was supposed to happen. Captain Schornsteimer took the controls, and because of the depressurization, began a controlled descent.
Please. Thank
He
you.
didn't know it, but the passenger oxygen manifold had been severed, so the passenger oxygen system was not working. First Officer
great.
Tompkins turned the transponder to emergency code 7700.
It's just
She tried to radio Honolulu that the flight was diverted
77.
to Maui, but there was so much noise in the cockpit that she couldn't be sure they could hear her. She and Schornsteimer couldn't even hear each other and had to communicate using hand signals.
Here, this
They had no
dope beat.
communication with the cabin. Had
Come
no
in,
idea the
come
extent of
in,
any injuries
Mayday.
among the passengers.
Mayday.
18 feet of fuselage. Fuselage had been torn from the plane, from just behind the main cabin entry door to just forward of the wings. The skin had been torn off from floor level on the left side to the window level on the right. The plane had, in fact, nearly broken in two, being held together only by the floor beams, several of which were broken or damaged. Flight attendant
Looks
Jane
like a
Sato
giant
Tanaka
shark
had been
took a
standing
bite.
in front of the plane. She'd been struck on the head by
sky
debris
shark.
and was unconscious. The third flight attendant, Michelle Honda, had been thrown
Wake
to the
up!
ground and bruised, but was
Wake
conscious.
up!
Despite her injuries, she had pulled herself up and was moving down the aisle, comforting the
God,
injured,
I
ensuring
need
that
my
passengers were
peanuts.
strapped in, and helping everyone don life vests. She tried to
I have
contact
low
the crew
blood
on the
sugar.
intercom, but could not get through. Then she asked something that no passenger ever wants to hear.
Can I have a
Is
Coke?
there anyone here who can fly this plane? In the cockpit, Captain Schornsteimer described the flight controls as loose.
I know,
In
I
fact, the
was
debris had done
little,
damage to the leading edges of both
unorthodox.
wings, both horizontal
I assure
stabilizers
you.
and the vertical stabilizer.
This is
In
fly-by-wire,
addition,
right?
it had gone into both engines, damaging several fan blades.
It can handle a double
Control had not
G-turn?
received Tompkins' transmission, but had seen the emergency
No?
transponder code.
Okay.
Unable to make contact with the plane, they notified Kahului that the plane may be headed their direction.
Come in,
The
Kahului.
plane
Come
descended,
in,
Tompkins switched to the
Kahului.
Maui Tower frequency and was able to make contact, reporting rapid
Thank God,
depressurization
Kahului.
and declaring an emergency.
Beverly's
As the plane
saved our
started
ass.
descending,
We're
the
coming in
Kahului started to
fast.
rise. Due to the damage to the control surfaces, the plane became harder to control under 170 knots, requiring Schornsteimer to come in fast. 170 knots, just over 195 miles per hour, which is 50
Dang.
miles faster than normal. As they lowered the landing
like
gear,
fastest
the light on the
NASCAR.
board failed to illuminate. Tompkins switched to manual nose gear extension, but neither the green lockdown light nor the red landing gear unsafe light illuminated.
I'm colorblind.
There's a way to manually look down on the gear, but the downlock viewer was under a hatch under the jump seat, which was occupied, and Captain Schornsteimer thought it was more important
Whoops.
to get the plane down.
Hey, man.
Obviously.
Tompkins told Maui that they were landing without the nose gear, and that they would need all the emergency equipment you've got. As they
Give me the
approached,
ladders,
Schornsteimer
the
felt a yawn.
slides.
The left engine had failed. He attempted to restart but got no response. In fact, the thrust lever cable going through where the floor had been deformed had broken. Witnesses on the
That's
ground
not
reported
good.
smoke pouring from the engine. 30 seconds before landing, the tower could finally visually see the front wheel, advising,
Oh,
the gear
shit.
appears down, the gear appears down. Less than 13 minutes after Schornsteimer first heard the ripping sound, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 set down. One passenger
Oh, that
told the New
wasn't
York
so
Times,
bad.
I've had worse landings in a normal aircraft. Another said,
I was really
He brought
scared.
that plane down so smoothly, it was just like riding in a Cadillac.
Beverly is
No smoke
Beverly's.
bringing down the plane so
Beverly's
smoothly,
the real
despite the
MVP
all-for-losing
here.
engine. Had the landing been rough,
Thanks,
the plane
Bev.
easily could have broken apart. An Aloha Airlines employee at Kahului Airport said, I can't believe it even stayed together. It should not have been able to land. The plane was so damaged that workers had to prop up the middle of the plane in order to just tow it off the runway. The Aloha employee described the plane as being held together by nothing but floor beams and the man upstairs.
Yes,
An
sir.
emergency evacuation was conducted on the runway. 8
Jump
people
down
were
the
seriously injured,
slide!
including Flight Attendant Jane
Yay!
Satomito and Joy Flanagan. Injuries included cuts and burns from the flailing wires, and one person with a fractured skull. 57 others had more minor
You
injuries.
know who that is.
The ambulance service in Maui was overwhelmed. A tour company volunteered their vehicles to take people to the hospital.
And thank you, Axis.
It was only as they did a head count that they realized that C.B. Lansing was no longer with the plane. She had been swept out of the plane with the initial depressurization.
No.
Airline employees described her as the textbook model of a good stewardess.
She was
The
alright.
accident aboard Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was one of the most significant in history in terms of the way that it transformed aviation.
Oh no. What am I missing? Aviation. Oh. What song was it again? Yellow.
Good afternoon, ladies. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and... Good morning.
The fuck?
Well, well, well.
Yeah. Good morning. Just wanted to...
The damage changed the way the entire industry understood and studied metal fatigue and caused the FAA
that it?
to focus much more clearly on the risks
that the
associated
right one?
with older aircraft. Assumptions like the argument that because the short flights that Aloha Airlines flew meant that the planes never achieved full pressurization and should have put less stress on the airframes turned
You
out to be
think?
completely erroneous. In fact, it's apparently
Oh. Come on.
Yeah. A little.
Good morning.
Experiment 1-1.
This is some bullshit. No, this is bullshit.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon,
See what I mean?
gentlemen.
cycles the number of takeoffs and landings. landings that is most important in understanding stress on the fuselage. And in addition, the tropical climate in which Aloha Airlines operated was a contributing factor, as that causes corrosion. The airplane apparently suffered from something called widespread fatigue damage, or WFD,
I'm so tired.
and that kept the tear straps from operating as they
So
should.
tired.
Nearly enough
The
sleep.
investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board identified numerous flaws in the Aloha Airlines maintenance and inspection.
Shit.
General Douglas MacArthur announced that the Philippines had been liberated, and in New Mexico, the United States tested the bomb that would finally put an end to the war. There was plenty
See
of
what
reason
it
in
did?
1945 for New Yorkers to look forward to a period of peace. But their peace was shattered with a spectacular
See that chin?
accident involving a United States Army Air Force plane.
Can't take that chin out.
In the world. It is history
World Trade Center?
that deserves to be remembered.
Oh,
Morning of
never
Saturday,
mind.
July 18th, 1945.
Not
the United
those
States
ones.
Army Air Force's B-25 Mitchell was flying from Bedford Army Airfield,
Not the brick
Massachusetts,
iron
to New
building.
Jersey's Newark Airport. At the controls of the plane was
But
Lieutenant
the
Colonel
steel
William F. Smith, Jr.
Core tower.
27-year-old Smith was an experienced pilot, a veteran of more than 30 missions and 1,000
Three of
combat
them
hours
with two
flying
planes.
B-17 bombers over Europe during the war.
I know, I
B-25
know.
was a twin-engine bomber, smaller than the B-17s that Smith had flown over Europe. This plane, using call sign 0577 and nicknamed Old John Feather Merchant,
Oh,
had been
thank
converted
you.
to fly VIPs. Smith had piloted
Oh, 5. Five, 7, 7. 6.
Good afternoon.
Oh man, it's this guy.
I'm sorry.
You scare me sometimes, bro.
Who was that?
I can tell by the way you walk into this place. You're like, hello, everybody. Excuse me. Listen, I have something to say. And everyone's like, boo. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it's a double winger. That's for sure.
Oh, this one. Okay,
the
I'm
plane
wrong.
from Sioux
This
Falls
one's
Army Air
fun.
Base in South Dakota and was scheduled to pick up his commanding officer in Newark before continuing back to Sioux Falls. He was accompanied by 30-year-old Army Air Force Staff Sergeant Christopher Dimitrovich and
Hey, I know
19-year-old
that
Navy
guy.
machinist mate Albert Perna, who was
I
hitching
know
a
that
ride
guy
to
too.
Massachusetts to see his family in Brooklyn.
Good afternoon.
As the plane approached New York City, it ran into heavy fog.
Yep,
Smith
it's
requested
him.
permission
It's
to
that
land at
guy.
New York's Municipal Airport, LaGuardia Field, but was advised that the visibility was too low and told to go on to Newark. LaGuardia Air Traffic Control signed off with a warning about visibility in the fog.
I
At the
can't see
present time,
shit.
the controller said, I cannot see the top of the Empire State Building.
We're gonna scratch our belly.
The words turned out cryptic. Smith responded, "Thank you very much."
You're
It's not
welcome.
exactly clear what happened next, but it seems like
Tickle, tickle,
Smith
tickle,
mistook
tickle.
the East River for the Hudson.
It
It was a
happens.
fatal mistake. Had he turned left as he came by the Chrysler Building, he would have been safe, but
Every
disoriented.
day I say that.
Turned
And I only
right
gone the other
and was
way.
playing straight over the island of Manhattan.
Marinate.
Air traffic control had advised that he stay above 1,500 feet over the city, but apparently
guys see
disoriented
how,
and thinking
this
himself
can
clear of the
really
city.
confuse
He had dropped to
people
500
about
feet,
being
perhaps thinking that he
Asperger's.
was on approach to Newark, or perhaps trying to get a view of the ground to orient
You're
himself.
saying that
Suddenly, the fog cleared just enough for Smith to realize that he was flying in the middle of
Holy
the
shit, the earth is flat.
Stan Lomax, a radio sports announcer, was driving to work when he heard the plane's engines. As he looked up, he recalled he yelled, "Climb, you fool, climb!" from his car window.
I can't
200
hear
miles per hour,
you.
the plane was on a
What?
collision course for the 850-foot RCA building at 30 Rockefeller Center. Smith
Of course,
veered at the last
Rockefeller-
moment,
of
avoiding
course it's a
averting disaster,
Rockefeller.
but The turn took him on a collision course with the tallest building on Earth, New York's iconic 102-story Empire State Building. Mort Cooper, a big league pitcher who had helped the St. Louis Cardinals win 2 World Series, witnessed the crash from the
Hey-o.
16th floor of the Hotel Commodore. He said, I heard the roar of a plane,
It is a
and I picked it
sight
up as
to
it roared
behold.
between me and the RCA
It is
building.
a,
Suddenly it flashed across my mind that it was flying very low, and that it would hit the Empire
Oh,
State Building.
shh.
The streets of downtown Manhattan were relatively empty on a foggy Saturday, but there were some witnesses along Fifth Avenue and 34th Street who heard the
Well,
roar of
that's
the engine.
King Kong saw
And
it
described
all.
the plane climbing steeply. William Utley, vice president of public
I
relations,
tried to wave him,
Burton
he
House
said.
Building at 10 East 40th Street, was quoted in the Scranton, Pennsylvania Times Tribune. The plane went past my window.
But he
head
didn't know
violently
class sign language.
This office is on the 38th floor. The engine was apparently going, and it looked like the pilot was trying to gain altitude. Smith was apparently trying to climb out of the city, but it was too late. At 9:40 a.m., old John Feather Merchant, traveling some 200 miles an hour, struck the 34th Street facade of the
Who
Empire
sells
State Building
feathers?
at
It
an
doesn't
altitude
seem
of
very
913
profitable.
feet, between the 78th and 79th floors. Nanette Morrison, at the same firm as Mr. Utley, said,
Thank
"There was
God
a
it wasn't
terrific
jet fuel."
explosion when the plane hit. It looked as though the
Airway
flash of
darkness.
flames and the explosion spread over 4 floors. Albert
Break
Fuller,
orange-
at the
break the
Ultimate
orange
department
box.
store across the street,
You
told the New
saw
York
nothing.
Times that the floor moved. I looked at the clerk and I said, "Isn't
They
that
don't have an
strange?"
orange box.
No, that's normal.
It's just what you say happened. You say
Happens
no.
every day. Oh man, I was recording. Shit.
Good job, asshole.
Now I have to.
Now I have to go on.
Well,
No, I have to continue.
And
You don't have to do anything.
man, is it refreshing.
This guy got lemonade back there.
you know who came up with the
Nostalgic.
quotable? This guy.
Probably me. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Very refreshing.
Fucking lemonade he brought.
I know, I get it.
We're here starving and sweating, and this guy is like, I'm so refreshed. I got the lemonade.
Very delicate dance between the past and
I know I'm a little crazy.
now and the future.
wild.
Really? Really?
If we all haven't figured out by now,
I haven't.
the Bible.
Where's my fucking lemonade?
Collection of books,
Oh, those?
past, present, and future.
I take it personally when people tell me that I crashed an airplane full of people,
Yeah, I nailed that on the first try, huh? All
especially
amalgamated-
whenever the pilot
Damn it. All
just like
amalgamated.
4 fingers.
All,
Of
all
cranberry juice.
amalgamating on
That wasn't cranberry juice. That was circumcision juice.
train of thought. It has something to do with alchemy and alchemy.
That or making an album. A Russian rap album with history.
Well, shit.
Yeah, nothing about cutting a dick off,
Shit.
but about spitting spat flows, yo.
I'm sure that was the point of the whole
Save
reason.
everyone's life.
What's your fucking name? You're fucking Alkilect, aren't you? Just because you're jealous, I don't want to use you. You want? I'm going to use
The time sphere.
Montgomery instead. Don't hate Alkilect.
So many. I mean,
Me and Rommel are going to fuck you up, bro.
Calculation
Oh, I want to hear you say it one more time.
Past, present, and future.
A what?
We're gaining train of thought.
A what? An amalgamation of imagination?
Future, all amalgamating into one thought, into one stream,
One masturbation.
on which we can all. I'm not going to say hitchhike, but because purely it's a sanitary factor, it's a hygiene issue.
Obviously.
Please watch your body of your physical and spiritual body of all muck and grime. It's for the benefit and the happiness of all those involved in intertubulating this interdimensional stream.
Don't boil all the water this time, asshole. Right?
We're not all immigrants. We are all voluntary, simultaneous migrants.
That's not what I heard.
It's the same place. And that is source 0 point. Reconnecting with as the Cowboys put it, our manifesting of destiny.
What did the Indians put
How
it?
we put it, our
Reuniting with Mother Earth and our origins?
discovery of our origins, where we
There
came
we
from,
go, man.
where we are
Sounds pretty good, yeah.
at this very moment in time travel, space, movement, unfolding origami,
Wouldn't go down too far.
where we are going. Destination. Destiny.
Man, dude.
The original point of extraction.
There is no extraction.
Turned out it was safe the whole time, and it's like a couple assholes took us way off course and put us in a very dangerous, very hostile environment
Damn you, Kenny Loggins.
for extraction, which makes no sense. Like
This is the danger zone.
Vietnam.
Ugh.
I'm not gonna say Grenada because that was. I think most people actually just. Most of the infantry and armored division that was sent there, they kind of looked at that like it was just it was like a weekend pass, you know, to go fire some live ammunition and, you know, pop a few caps and do this or that, you know what I mean? And, you know, take cover! Yeah, it was fucking cool, yeah. Or as Bill Hicks put it in the Desert Iraqi War, I think I got those words backwards. The desert Operation Desert Storm, because our wars are generational, as you know. Operation Desert Storm #1, Operation Desert Storm #2, Operation Iraqi Freedom, mission accomplished. Twin Towers, baby, we did it for you. Mwah. Kiss the baby. Where are we at? No, okay, we're at 9/11. Very good. Shall we start there, or shall we continue on into Thanksgiving?
For the old actions and sins that I continue to make, and then yell at to hurry up and get here and die, so I can continue living in sin.
Now that, folks, is considered a
As
regular
long as we
meal
all know how
compared
it
to this
feels
place.
now, you know, to each one of us
This place, like,
explicitly be
Last
exposed
Stand
as
Stalingrad
a
every day.
like all aspects of humanity, all
Constantly being
aspects of
presented with
leadership, all
feet,
aspects of government, all aspects
Croissants,
of
fucking frames with
audio
rap
manufacturing,
model numbers on them.
manufacturer companies,
They don't win.
Bluetooth, whatever, all the way down to them. Do we all lose train of thought and forget where we were going with that idea, only to be recovered later by a mystic of sorts? I don't know his name. It's kind of Gandalfy. Not homo sexual, but was that guy gay? The guy who played Gandalf. Was that guy gay? That guy was gay, right? No, that was Picard. No, wait, they're both gay. Oh, okay. My apologies. Turns out. I was gonna say, it turns out we're all gay. But then I caught myself and, you know, started laughing and realized, wait a second, dude, I'm not gay. Not everyone's gay. Just those two guys are gay. Are they married? Are they married in real life?
No. The partnership.
You don't know, but they have a combined net worth of how much? Wow. That's impressive.
No jacket.
That's impressive. Makes you really wonder, like,
It says P. Diddy's jacket.
what are the mechanisms of capitalism and or freedom to pursue and make money off of whatever you want be captured in such a meaningful moment in the history of America that goes to show that the American dream, as my good friend George Carlin says,
I think this is cool.
may not be just a dream after all.
Right.
It turns out under specific regimental and societal pressures and
Thanks for the jacket.
obviously and cut and obviously
I see the jacket P. Diddy got me. He said I have to have it back after the shoot, though.
massive implications of global warming
Brr.
with our inventor of the internet,
Al Gore, obviously.
being the first to recognize this and being so kind to inform the rest of the population.
I don't know. Kind. Right word.
Force that
This look imaginary.
not friendly towards us at all whatsoever. Now over here at the NPR, we may have accepted some of that money that was conveyed to Al Gore and his Man Bear Pig associates. It wasn't quite as far reaching yet to extend into PayPal, which was Elon Musk. We still gratefully and almost sexually want to extend our request to Daddy Elon for more money. And then we're going to hop on over and catch the gravy train into the soul train, where we get on down with a little bit of modern day hip hop. It's ladies and gentlemen, it's just exquisite. It's a sight to behold. It truly is. My name is Jean de Paul, and I'm not from France. I'm not actually even from French Canada. A Twitters and Hollywood